Today I'm joined by Aleta Maxwell of Uplifting Leadership. Aleta, thank you so much for coming in today. I'm so glad to have you here. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing wonderful today. Thank you.
Aleta, let's dive into it. Can you start a little bit and share some of your backstory and how you got started in the coaching space?
Sure, yeah. So primarily my a lot of my experience was in the hospitality industry. I came up in hospitality. I was a general manager for a restaurant group here in New York City. When I had my child in 2007, that forced me to kind of pivot because I was working ridiculous hours in that position. I wanted to be a lot more hands-on and present for my son. So that's when I went into nonprofits. I worked for about 6 years in nonprofits in the HR space. And then everything kind of came to emerge when I joined Dos Toros Taqueria. It was a very small restaurant group here in New York City. They had 3 locations. The owners were from the Bay Area, where I was from. They had me come on. I very quickly overtook finance, HR, and operations. So wore a couple hats, was able to give away operations and finance eventually and really focus on HR. Became the chief human resource officer for them and helped them grow from 3 locations to 22 locations. During my time in that role, I realized that I really loved developing leaders. I really loved coaching on the soft skills, how we communicate, how we give feedback in a really healthy way, how we hold each other accountable in a healthy way. That became my passion. So when I realized that we were going to eventually and very soon meet our end goal, which was the sale of the company, I decided that that's where I wanted to pivot to. I really wanted to dive into coaching. So at the beginning of 2020, we sold the company. We finalized that deal, which was really exciting, and the timing could not have been more perfect. And that allowed me, while we went down into lockdown, I was able to write a book. I was able to develop a bunch of online courses for leadership development. I got my coaching certification, and I started working with some really high-level leaders on developing out some of their soft skills. And that's really what I've been focused on for the last 5 years.
Amazing. I love how all those pieces fit together. And it sounds like everything that you've done in the past has been one stepping stone to getting you where you really meant to be. And it sounds like you're really thriving in the space now.
100%. It's so funny because every turn in my career, I've always been like, what is this going to amount to? Because it just seems so weird and off in left field. But it's true. When I look back at my career, I'm so thankful for all those twists and turns because it's given me the confidence and the experience to now be able to do what I'm doing and just loving every moment of it.
So, what is the number one thing that you help people with?
Communication and leadership skills. I'm finding that so many, and I witnessed this firsthand in my previous role as CHRO, we were giving the keys to a $1.5 to $3 million restaurant to very young managers who did not have any type of development into how they communicated and how they led people on a day-to-day basis. And I saw the root causes and the effects of that. As I went into coaching and started working with C-suite individuals, executives, people from the Department of Defense, I saw that there was parallels, that we had people in very high level, senior level leadership positions that really were very uncomfortable having difficult conversations. They were uncomfortable setting expectations and resetting them or finding the root cause as to why expectations weren't being met. They were struggling with creating cultures of feedback. They were really not intentional with how they were showing up on a day-to-day basis. And when I looked at some of the whys, I realized that not everybody has been given the opportunities that I was given at a young age to develop out some of these skills. And I think a lot of us just think that this is common sense, that obviously you're going to know these things, but they're not. We really have to invest the resources to develop these skill sets, particularly with the emerging leaders that we're seeing who have been raised with social media and online ability to communicate. That really shows the gaps in their ability to communicate face to face and in person.
I love that. How have you seen leadership change, or how have you seen the definition of leadership change over the years?
I know that when I was coming up, there was a lot more mentorship programs in most of the businesses that I found myself in, even in hospitality. There was a lot more, I'll use the word loyalty, but long lasting at each position. So if I went in and even as a server into a position, it was not absurd for me to be there a year or 2 years. And so my managers took such an interest in developing out my skills and my teammates' skills. And I find that to be really lacking today. I think that we're so focused on efficiency that we don't give a lot of space for the development of some of these soft skills. And particularly now that leaders are in those positions that also need that development, it's kind of the blind leading the blind almost. And the lack of resources that we invest in development, I've seen just completely impact the bottom line, because the turnover costs that some of these businesses are experiencing without realizing it not only leads to dollars wasted, but also leads to burning out customer loyalty. Because obviously, if great customer service isn't happening because people aren't bringing their best selves to work, then it's going to impact your top line as well as your bottom line for turnover costs.
Sounds like a flywheel, right? When if you get the leadership right and the dynamics and the culture, I think you mentioned a culture of feedback, of growth, then that continues to build the internal team, build the internal culture, which again will feed over to the customers, and you get the loyalty, the retention, satisfaction from customers.
That was really one of the things that was a pride and joy for us at Dos Toros in my previous endeavor. We had such high engagement, and for the hospitality industry, that's very, very hard. But we would have something ridiculous like 84% engagement scores with over 73% taking part in that survey, and you could feel it. And our customers would let us know. They would let us know that, yes, your food is amazing, but the people really care, not only about each other, but the space and us as customers. And you can really feel that authenticity when you do have everybody bought in and working really well together.
So true, so true. So if we switch gears a little bit and look at the business itself, obviously there's no growth without challenges and learnings. What is a challenge or a learning that you had along the way in building this business?
Well, I think it also has to do with my personality. But when I first started in 2000, everything was very precious. So everything had to be perfect. I didn't want to post anything unless it was perfect. I would sit there and rack my brain about any social media post because I wanted it to be just so. And so I treated everything very preciously. And I have learned over the years that nothing is precious, that just because I think everybody's seeing this one thing, nobody's seeing it. Nobody's paying attention to me. I'm not the center of everybody's world. And so that idea that nothing's really precious has taken a lot of the pressure off of me. And when I talk to a lot of new entrepreneurs or people that are building their business, that does seem to be an obstacle for themselves as well, because everything's very precious and we want it to be perfect. But progress over perfection is something that I have learned to keep in mind. And that's kind of one of my mantras for sure.
If your business had a reset button, what would you simplify first?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would probably simplify, if I could go back and do it all over again, along the sense of it's not precious, I would have released development courses as I was done with them, instead of holding everything and making a big module. I was so focused on creating so much value that I think I complicated things rather than just being like, here's a 30-minute course for people that it would interest them. I instead rolled out an 18-hour course because I just wanted to be so packed of value. And then I learned the hard way that nobody wants an 18-hour course, Aleta. They want bite-sized chunks. They want small things that they can get through, that they can learn quickly and retain quickly. So I think that was one of the hardest lessons for me to learn.
Small changes and many iterations, and especially in today's attention deficit society, the smaller and the easier to like you said, to have these bite-sized nuggets of wisdom and knowledge that can be applied iteratively is probably
Yeah.
the way to go.
Yeah. So my first 2 years, I would have done completely different if I could go back.
I love that. What's one of your biggest wins or proudest moments?
Writing my book, Uplifting Leadership: How to Have Difficult Conversations That Motivate and Inspire. My coach challenged me to write a book. I just thought that was absolutely insane. I am not a writer. What do I have to share with the world that hasn't already been said? It was quite daunting to start out. So being able to do that, to put that to bed, to feel really good with what I gave out to the world for whoever it could serve, that I think is one of my proudest accomplishments.
Kudos to you and congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. It was a lift. My coach has asked me when's the next one. I'm like, girl, I am still recovering from the last one. So
Just gonna ask when the next one is coming out, so I guess you've already answered that.
yeah, I'm still recovering. We'll get there eventually.
Aleta, as we look forward, what do you envision for yourself and your business? What are you really excited to create and grow over the next 12, 18, 24 months?
Yeah, I've recently launched company specific masterminds, and this is something I'm really excited for 2026. So, in conversations with just a lot of different HR individuals and executives, we all agree that middle management and upper management really is where the investment we could benefit from investment on development. So I've created company mastermind. So an example is I'm working with a fashion retail company. They have 18 managers all over the United States. So we do monthly coaching sessions where they'll have learning information they get at the beginning of the month to marinate on. We come together as a group to do an hour and a half coaching session where we work through the learning material. How do we apply it? What's crunchy? What obstacles do we foresee? How do we make this super applicable? And then how do we hold each other accountable in really healthy ways? And these are just so much fun. The engagement is really fun. I see light bulb moments every single time. I also see just the best practice sharing. That is so much fun to see because some of these managers have so much experience and they're not given necessarily a place or an avenue to share it with the new leaders that are joining the team. And so this time allows them to be a little bit vulnerable with each other, connect, share those best practices. And then I'm hearing that there are resources for each other outside of the coaching where before they didn't have those relationships. So I'm really excited to launch those with many new companies in 2026.
That does sound exciting, and it sounds like there's just so much opportunity to help connect people who aren't necessarily connected on a day-to-day basis within an organization as well.
I find that, unfortunately, the HR department is so bogged down with the compliance issues and then just payroll stuff and benefits and the day to day that they're just so stretched they don't necessarily have the bandwidth to do some of this work. Now that they don't want to, every HR person I've talked to is like, would be so much fun to dig into. I'm just swamped. I can't touch it. So being able to relieve them of this burden, allowing them to focus on, their day-to-day tasks while I take kind of the leadership development off their plate, that's also been really, really exciting to be able to serve them in that way.
I love that. Now, before we wrap up, I'd love to leave our listeners with one key takeaway.
I would really challenge everybody to create moments of buy-in. I'm finding that a lot of leaders that I talk to don't necessarily understand the difference between buy-in and getting feedback. Buy-in, in my mind, is where we're having one-on-one or very small group conversations where I'm telling you the problem as I see it. I'm getting you to either agree with me or tell me how you see it differently. I'm proposing a possible solution and I'm letting you kind of tear it apart, share your fears about this and your concerns. We can talk through it and getting you on board before I create the thing, before I finalize the thing and roll the thing out. when we follow these steps to create buy-in, I'm finding that we just have a much better plan at the end of the day, because 9 times out of 10, somebody's going to show me a hole in my plan that I just did not see or was not aware of. But I'm also seeing that it then becomes our plan instead of my plan. So when I roll it out, everybody's already nodding along. Yep. We all co-signed this. So I'm not necessarily forcing anything. Everybody's on board from the beginning. And I find that that one critical piece is what allows us to build so much trust within our teams. That when we bypass that and we just get somebody's feedback once the thing is done, we break that trust so quickly, and we end up setting ourselves up for a lot more obstacles that we have to overcome, convincing people about our plan. And so I do find that that one piece, if we can crack the code and get really clear as to how we create buy-in, I find that the benefits of that are pretty crazy down the line.
I imagine one of the benefits would be ownership, people taking ownership and responsibility as this new idea or process or whatever it may be has been implemented. Is that the case?
Yeah, because we're going to meet obstacles. There's going to be something that falls apart. When it's my plan, it's Aleta's plan. Go talk to her about that. When it's our plan, there's a lot more, okay, how do we fix this? I have some solutions, right? So there's just much more ability to jump in and desire to jump in when it's our plan rather than just my plan.
Yeah, I love that. That's gold for sure. Aleta, thank you so much for sharing your story today. I know people will take a lot away from this. Where can our listeners find you online?
Yeah, they can go to my website, www.upliftingleadership.com. They can also reach out to me by email, aleta@upliftlead.com. I would be happy to offer all of your listeners a 45-minute strategy session where we can talk through their challenges, their concerns, figure out an action plan for them. If I could be helpful, great. If I can't be helpful, I can share resources that they might be able to utilize to reach their end goals.
That's amazing. We'll have the links in the show notes below. And Aleta, thank you so much again for joining me on the Leadership Lab. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you today.
Thank you so much, Karen, for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you for spending your time with me today on the Leadership Lab podcast. My hope is that this conversation sparked a new perspective or reinforced something you already knew. Until next time, keep leading with curiosity and intention.